and welcome to the pre-season review episode of the Blues Focus podcast, airing weekly on Spotify, iTunes and on YouTube. I'm Kieran, the host for this episode, and with me I've got Elliot. We're going to get straight into it this week, starting with the news this afternoon of Ivan Sanchez finally confirming his transfer on free contract, 3 years with the option of a fourth. Seems to be the one that's excited the fans the most so far. What are your views on it?
Yeah, really pleased with it. I think it's really good business. I think I'm quite impressed with what the club's done so far. I mean, no transfer fee. I'm imagining the wages are quite, not massively low, but not too high. And yeah, he looks a useful player, a useful prospect. But as we know, I think there's quite a large step up from the second division in Spain to the Championship. So it'd be interesting to see what he can do next season.
Yeah, I mean, straight away, you draw comparisons to Villalba last year, who seemed to hit the ground running, and obviously it never really quite worked out for, whatever reason, whether it's the other half or not settling it in over here. But obviously, hopefully we don't see that from Sanchez. But how do you see him fitting into the side? What's your views on where he'll start? Obviously, yeah, what input will he have?
Like I say, I think I speak for most supporters. I've never heard of the guy before. We were sort of linked to him, and having seen obviously some of the clips of him from this season, the last sort of 2 or 3 seasons he's had in Spain. He looks obviously a predominantly heavily a left-sided or a left-footed player. Likes to cut inside, so it could be quite predictable, I think, next season. So I think Karanka might like to play him right or left side. I think he looks sort of adept at playing either side. I think could even potentially play behind the striker as well.
Yeah, I remember the last time we had a predominantly left-footed Spanish player on the right-hand side. That ended well for us, didn't it?
Yeah, no, it wasn't so good, was it?
Yeah, I think Karanka obviously has a plan in place, hence why he come here. Obviously, whether this was one of the names that Karanka's put forward, obviously from his time over in Spain over the past 12 months watching, he says he was studying the game, whether it's one of the players that's caught his eye. But I think knowing Karanka's formation, 4-2-3-1, you've got to assume he'll fit in that three. With Crowley and Bella, perhaps? Do you think?
I think so. Yeah, I'd imagine. Obviously, we're still quite early on in the transfer window, so we don't know. I imagine there's going to be at least another handful of players that are going to come into the side. So I don't know. I don't know how he's. I think he wants a little bit more versatility. I think from what I'm seeing of the players that he's brought in so far. So potentially, if what's been said today, with potentially Lecco coming in, again another player that can potentially play in the striker role, off the striker. He can play right side potentially or left side. So it looks a very useful player as well. So it could be very much. We could be very much a side next season that could rotate players into different positions going forwards, which would be. Like I say, it'd be really interesting to see. And it makes us less predictable, which should be really good, because I think like the last season and the season before, we're so predictable with the way we play, with the 2 up front. And it would just be really nice to see next season a little bit of unpredictability from us. And
Yeah, I think obviously you say it there. We are obviously at this moment in time really just assuming off what we know we've got in the squad, rather than obviously other faces potentially coming in. And I assume 1 or 2 will be going out the door as well. But one thing I have noticed in pre-season as well is obviously going to get his chance because it's pre-season, get the minutes in the legs, but David Davis, he seems to have been impressed with him. Do you see a way back for him in the Karanka era?
It's a difficult one, because when he went on loan to Charlton, I was quite surprised with obviously at the time our lack of depth in the squad, and I assumed at the time that it was a move that was probably pushed more by the player. He wanted to go out and play some football, which is fair enough. He's since come back, and I'm not sure. I think we're a bit fully stocked in that area. But what I would say about David Davis is, in terms of a defensive midfielder, I think he's probably our best passer of a ball. Sunjic, he's a bit more agricultural. He'll get around a bit more and he'll make the tackles and put his foot in. But David Davis, I think he can pick a pass, and that's something Kifton Bell can't do. And to an extent, I don't think Gary Gardner's that great with his distribution either. So I think he's ahead of someone like Kifton Bell, to be perfectly honest. I think if someone's going out the door, I think it'd be Kifton Bell.
Yeah, interesting to say that. Obviously, midfield, plenty of numbers in there, hence why I mentioned Davis, but obviously also the rumour that seems to be knocking around lately of Adam Clayton potentially coming in as well on a free contract. Karenka knows him from his time at Middlesbrough. You'd assume he would play in the pivot with Sunjic.
Yeah.
But then, obviously, you've got Davis, Gardner, Kift. Obviously, all will want minutes, will all want to play. So, yeah, I think one of those have got to go. But, yeah, Sunjic, hoping for better from him this season. Do you think that Karanka's style suit him a bit more than the Clotet season? And then obviously the ultimate slump at the end.
Yeah, I think if we move towards more of a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-1-4-1 kind of formation, depending on home and away, I think Sunjic will prefer that position where he can just sit in front of the back four and do the defensive work, rather than a little bit more sort of emphasis on him to bring the ball out from the back. It's not. I don't think that's his game at all. His game is just to sit on the halfway line, to be honest. And I think we'll see a better player next season. But I do believe we do need a player next to him as well that can distribute the ball a lot better. And unfortunately, we don't have that at the moment. Whether that's Adam Clayton, I don't know. I don't personally know a lot about him and about his profile. So hopefully, I'm sure Karanka knows what he's doing. So we can only trust in the players that he wants to bring in.
Yeah, as I say, he seems to be going for a fair few of his tried and tested players that got him promoted in his time at Middlesbrough. Obviously, aged since then. So whether they're the same, whether they've got the same in their legs as they did do, how long, 6 years ago? Now, 7 years ago, however long ago it was. But yeah, one thing we haven't actually touched on the podcast is the Karanka appointment officially being made. We heard the rumours just before our last podcast. But yeah, you're excited. Finally, we got what seems to be a shrewd tactician in charge.
Yeah,
I am. Optimism, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. Yeah, of course. Any fan's optimistic before the season begins. I'm more optimistic than this time last year, put it that way. But
say that again.
Yeah, I think the last time I spoke on a podcast was just before it was announced, and I was saying I would have taken Paul Cook at the time. And if I had to decide between Paul Cook and Karanka, I would take Karanka all day long. So yeah, it was a pleasant surprise when he came in. He's definitely a manager that's he's results driven. He's not particularly going to be bothered about the style of play next season. He will come in out, which is exactly what we need. We don't need another manager coming in and trying to play possession and passing based football, which is what they basically wanted to do from the start of last season when Craig Gardner did an interview and said the only way we're going to get out of this division is to pass our way out and play football to get out of this division. Well, we're not going to be able to do that, I'm afraid. We don't have the money to spend to bring in a quality that's good enough to pass our way out of this division. The only way we're going to get out of this division is to be organised, well set up, and hopefully we'll bring in some of the experience, like we've already seen with George Friend coming in, the sort of know-how to get the results and get us out.
Yeah, we obviously we touched on it pretty much every episode last season that we never had the squad to play this fancy possession-based game. How they ever thought it was a good idea was beyond me. I, for one, and I'm pretty sure I speak for the majority of the Blues fans when I say we don't really care for fancy football, to be honest with you. Does it matter if we had 70% possession and 900 completed passes if we draw 0-0, for example? They're not the results and the style that gets you out of the league, I'm afraid, is it? It's, as you say, you've got to be difficult to beat. You've got to take your chances, which is one thing we don't do at the minute. And yeah, you've got to be. And I think Karanka knows how to do that. He's proved that time and time again. But interesting thing we touched on before the podcast, going back to the Sanchez signing. And I know we say stats don't make the player what they are. But is it about time we start seeing a player come through the doors that we know for a fact has end product? Because we always say the goals are what's lacking or the ability to finish. Obviously, we need a new striker as well. But is it about time we start getting these players now to put the numbers in?
Yeah.
Because
I know, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I know a lot of people, they hate stats. They're like, stats are for brats and all this sort of thing. But at the end of the day, if you're going to, the teams that get out of this division, the teams that have strikers that score 20 goals, that have wide forwards or wide midfielders that chip in with multiple assists up to sort of 8 to 10 goals. And that's something we haven't had for a long while. I know Djukovic has been doing quite well, and Che had that good season, but we need a 20 goal striker next season. And I don't think it matters how old they are or who they are. It just needs to be a 20 goal striker. It doesn't need to be someone with a sell-on value. We just need the goals. That's what we need. We need someone to put the ball away next season.
Yeah, it'd be interesting because obviously we know that the money's there from the Jude transfer. Obviously, whether that gets used this window or not. Obviously, 3 signings so far, all of which 3 transfers. Arguably not huge wages. So, do we think that a large chunk of that money will get reinvested in a, one marquee signing up front, perhaps? Obviously, that, like you say, you need to spend the money if you want 20 goals from a player. You're not going to get them on a free transfer, obviously, unless you pull a absolute worldy fluke out of the bag like Norwich did with Pukki, for example. But then transfers are a 1 in a million chance of happening. So, do we need to put our money where our mouth is when it comes to getting a goal scorer?
I'd like to think with the business that they've done so far, which has been really good, that they're saving their money for a really top quality striker or centre back, hopefully both. I don't think we tend to need to be spending more than 10 or 12 million in this window. But I do think we need to spend a chunk of, small portion of that money on a good striker. But like I say, it doesn't need to be someone that's got a sell-on value. It just needs to be someone that has regularly scored in the last two to 3 seasons, knows the championship. So yeah, that's what I think. I think we'll probably go back in for Clark Salter by the looks of it. What would your view be on that one?
I think for me, it depends on what sort of deal it is. Obviously, you've got a loan. Is it a loan or permanent. I've seen the rumours of us going back in for him, and obviously a couple of people have said that he'd want to come back to us. But I think it all depends on, like I say, last season after the restart, he was completely unrecognisable to the player that he was pre-COVID lockdown. And when the push came to the shove and we needed someone to fight for the shirt in those final few games, I think his mind was always on the fact that it doesn't matter for me. I'm going back to Chelsea regardless this summer. So if it's a loan deal, and obviously I don't want to tempt fate, but if, you know, typical Blues fashion, we end back up in that sort of situation. I mean, even when we fight our way out of it, we get ourselves points deduction and end up back in it anyway. So, you know, we're always one to take it to the wire, and I want players who are there knowing that this is their club and they've got to fight for it. If he's a loan deal, he showed me too much last season that he wouldn't fight in that sense. I don't want to sound too harsh. I think he's a very good player. But I think, yeah, permanent I'd take if he wants to come. And obviously the money's got to be right, because there is players out there on a free deal, Ayala, for example, who you could take and not have to spend £5 million on. But what are your views?
It's a difficult one. I like Clark Salter, but I wouldn't spend money on him personally. I think we, like you say, we could go and get a free agent like Ayala that would do the same job, probably, if not better, with his experience that he has in the Championship, and he knows Karanka as well. Again, it's paying the wages, which is something we've tried to get away from, which has been a positive. We've tried to get away from getting tied down on stupidly big contracts, which have been a detriment to the club's finances. So I don't know if I'm presuming Ayala's in a position where him and his agent are just sort of waiting the window out, seeing what sort of offers come in. There's a long while yet to go. So they're obviously not in a particularly in a rush. So, you know, I would like Ayala, but it would have to be on a decent wage, not 25 grand a week, something stupid like that. What would you take him?
I would take Ayala personally. Again, I wouldn't say 25 grand a week is, I don't know, not on that sort of wages, but I think it was inevitable the second that Karanka came in that his name was going to be bandied about straight away. Obviously, as soon as Karanka was appointed, all the in the know accounts decided to say that Ayala was coming to West Hills to discuss deals and all that sort of nonsense. And obviously, that's not come to anything. But if we could get him in on a slightly modest wage, I don't see how maybe a 2-year deal could do any harm.
Yeah,
he knows Karanka knows him. I mean, every time I've seen him play against us, he's looked solid. He puts his body on the line, gets his head to the ball, and he's a no nonsense defender, isn't he? You know, we've got players at the minute who, Dean and Roberts, they do win their headers and they win their fair share of challenges, but they're just a walking calamity, weren't they, towards the end of the season? And to just an accident waiting to happen. And I've never once seen that from Ayala when I've watched him play. So he can only improve what we've got. And I think he'd link up well with Friend again. If Friend is going to be this left-sided centre-back that they're saying, can it be any harm making them the new partnership, perhaps?
I'd be keen for it. It just, like I say, it's just what his agent's looking for, and what sort of length contract is after, whether they can come to some sort of compromise. But I'm sure there's going to be many clubs that are going to be sniffing around him anyway. So, yeah, I think that would be a difficult one with Ayala. But I would like a similar defender in that sort of similar mould, someone that's got experience in the Championship, similar sort of age, because I think we need to replace the centre of our defence drastically.
Yeah, and obviously following on from the central defence, another key area that obviously needs plenty of strengthening, the goalkeeper position. Too many names linked to list them all in the remainder of the podcast, but obviously two of the key ones that we've seen, the bigger names, Darlow and Everidge, linked. Darlow fell through by the sounds of things. Newcastle weren't keen in the end on letting him go. Etheridge, apparently, wages, the stumbling block, which obviously touches on what we've been saying. We don't want to give away too much in terms of wages. And then, and obviously now the most recent one, Phillips from Charlton, and they want £1 million to take him away. Where do your thoughts lie on the goalkeeper situation?
Yeah, I like the sound of Phillips. I think if we could pick him up at the sort of price that's been touted, around sort of £1 million to £2 million, it'd be a really good piece of business. And again, it wouldn't cost us the earth in wages. So I think, obviously, a lot of supporters, the first choice probably would have been Darlow, but that doesn't look like it's a goer now with the injury to Dubravka. And he's a solid number 2 as well at Newcastle, so it's very difficult to do anything there. They'll want stupid money to let him go. And then Etheridge, I think that was just sort of more along the lines of wages too high. Once again, he's on Premiership wages still. So I think this is definitely the ideal sort of goalkeeper we should go for. I'm keeping my fingers crossed on this one because I think that'd be a really good signing if we can do something there.
Yeah, I agree. And I know obviously Lee Camp was made his fair share of penalty saves, but the one thing that stands out was the penalty save at our place in the 1-1 draw after the restart from Phillips. Solid hand to it, and you just seen in that game a keeper who, he obviously he's not a world beater, but he had a bit of quality about him. More than good enough for a Championship number 1. And like you say, I think for £1 million, £1.5 million, whatever it might end up being, I think in time that's a steal if you can get him on a decent length contract. I think I'd imagine he's on reasonable wages. I can't see him demanding too much compared to the other two. So I don't see why we wouldn't go for it. And the name's been heavily linked, so I imagine there's been at least an inquiry by the sounds of things. Obviously.
Yeah, I think so. His age is right as well. He's 25. That's perfect, really. Like the Etheridge and Darlow, 30, 31 this season. I know goalkeepers go on and on, but in terms of bringing a goalkeeper in that will definitely have a sell-on value potentially, I think it makes a lot of sense to get him in. So yeah, like I say, bring someone like that in, get a couple of better experienced defenders, a striker that scored 20 goals, and we'll be looking good next season.
Yeah, we don't want too much, do we?
Not a lot. No, not a lot. I mean, in terms of the striker, what sort of, just off the top of your head, what sort of striker, whether it be a loan or what sort of strikers would you have in mind? Who would you go for next season?
I mean, I've seen all sorts of names bandied about for years. Well, since Che Adams left off, I'd say years. Start of last season. He was linked with Gale. He was linked with, Ivan Toney's name's been bandied about. Don't get me wrong, I'd love Ivan Toney down the Blues. I don't think we can compete with. I don't think we can compete with any of the clubs that are linked with him. Otherwise, Brentford have apparently agreed a fee with him again this evening. So that doesn't look like a goer, and I don't think we'd put rising up to £12.5 million on the table for one player.
No.
Looking at the business done so far, that's a definite non-starter. I don't really know who's out there that's readily available for us in terms of the suits the Karanka mould, if you will. My friend, who I speak to a fair bit, who is unfortunately a Villa fan, so I won't mention him again after this. He says he gives it 6 months before we see Patrick Bamford in a blue shirt.
Yeah.
I can't see that personally, but I know Karanka's obviously a fan, and Leeds are looking to replace him on the front line. So,
Yeah.
if you're looking at a fairy tale signing, so to speak, up there, I think that would probably be your long shot. I honestly don't know who I'd go for personally, though. You can't really take a punt on a relative unknown in the Spanish league. We've done that with Jimenez, didn't work. You need a proven goal scorer in England, and there's not really that many about available.
No, really. I agree. I think we either need to pull off an absolute worldie in terms of a loan from a Premiership club somewhere, or we need to get the checkbook out and put a serious fee down for a striker. Otherwise, I think we're going to struggle in the goals department next season again.
One player that I do like the look of, and he's not necessarily for the goals, but just to throw the name out there, is Kirk from, I think it's Crewe, the young lad. I think he's a right-sided player. I don't know why that name's just come to my mind, but he looks like a handful when I've seen him play last season. He's a young lad, obviously going to have to sell on potential. I'd like to see us go for some of these young lads in the lower leagues, especially like a Crewe. You've seen that they've brought players through before, Nick Powell, for example, who didn't really cut it at United, but on his day he's got talent. And I think a couple of the young lads there that got promoted with him this season, they're of the same sort of standard.
Yeah,
we could.
I think so. I'd have a look at a few at Cholton, like that Doherty that scored against us the other day. It's a useful player, and Macaulay Bonne, I think his name is. Another really useful player. They've got some really useful forward players there.
I'm surprised we haven't tried to take advantage of Wigan's situation as well, if I'm honest. There was a handful of players at Wigan that I'd have liked, and there still is. I wouldn't mind Sam Morsey in the midfield, for example. But you look at the names that they've moved on. Yeah, Jamal Lowe ended up at Swansea today. Williams in the midfield, was a good player. Obviously, Robinson's gone from there, which I never think was a realistic one for us. But you don't try, you never know, do you? Really, I suppose. We could have got Jamal Lowe in from Wigan. I think if we got there before Swansea.
I think we've got better. If I'm honest, I think we've got better in that sort of position. I think. But yeah, I agree. There are players at Wigan, but Karanka's obviously come in and he's been given a green light in terms of getting his own targets in. So he's obviously got his own targets in mind, which is really pleasing. Really pleasing to know that he's kind of got free rein now to get what he wants to get in, which is really good news. And I'm sure we'll see 4 or 5 interesting names coming to the club in the next sort of month or so. I definitely don't think business will be completed before the first game, unfortunately. We'll have to make do with what we have. But like anything with this window, unfortunately, everything comes down to the last sort of day, really, in terms of deals and transfers and wages, etc.
I can see us being busy right down to the final minute. And sometimes it's the most stressful time, isn't it? Especially when I think the last time I thoroughly enjoyed a deadline day, which I probably shouldn't have done really, was the Redknapp deadline day, because you'd spend money. Ultimately, it got us a points deduction. But that was the last time I was comfortable and happy watching a deadline day, rather than sitting there thinking, "Oh God, we still need a striker, we still need this, that, and the other." You've always got that pessimistic view on it, haven't you? But like I say, I think Karanka knows what he wants. You've got to give it the time, as he said in his welcome press conference. You can't rush all these signings through in a week, 2 weeks. You've got to. Some negotiations can get drawn out. Some of the targets might not be available until towards the end of the window, they might be looking for replacements for them before they sell, all sorts of things. So,
yeah,
I do have high hopes for, like you say, at least 3 or 4. You say interesting first team names as well. You know, I want names that are going to come in and improve the starting 11, not just the squad. Because obviously it was evident at last season that what we had at the minute isn't gonna really threaten anything towards the top half of the table. And ultimately, I think that's what Karanka's come here for, is to get in and around that in a 12 months' time. And the building for that starts now, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I don't think he's looking to build a side for promotion next season. I think he's looking to build a stable side, a side that's going to, stay away from any trouble next season, and hopefully, build from there. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. I'm not deluded enough to think we're going to be anywhere near the top 6. I'd love it, but in reality, it's not going to happen. So if we finish sort of 12th to 14th, or 14th to sort of 10th position in there the next season, that would be good. And then we'll build from there, see what the next windows bring.
Yeah. So, and right, we'll round off the podcast. We did get sent a couple of questions on Twitter over the past few weeks, just to touch base on. First one we've kind of touched base on already, but we was asked, if Blues could bring in Ayala on £25,000 a week, would you sign one less player to get him in, or not sign him at all, and instead bring in 3 players on £8,000 a week to increase the squad depth? So would you take one Ayala on 25 grand, or 3 £8,000 a week players for the depth of the squad?
I think that's a tricky question. I think that's a difficult one. I would personally take Ayala. I like the experience he has. He's still 29, so still got some couple of years in his legs as well. I would take him. I think we do need, although we didn't need quantity, unfortunately, we need some quality as well at the same time. So it's very difficult. I would go for the quality first, because quantity-wise, we do have the development squad that we can pad out in places.
Yeah, which leads us on to the next question, actually, which is, who do you think will be the breakout player of the fringe players in the coming season? Which we touched base on before the recording.
Yeah,
for me, it's Odin Baylor, if we keep him around for 12 months.
I agree. I agree with you there. I think this is his season now. This is his breakthrough year for him. So it's a big year for him, I think. He's going to have a lot of competition by the looks of it as well, which is good. So hopefully that'll push him on. I think another player that interests me could be Reed. I do think that he might be on the periphery next season. I think he'll be in and around the first team for sure. So he may get a chance.
Out there. We was asked, do you think we need more pace in the team? Most teams seem to have more pace than us in the league.
Yeah, we definitely need more pace. We need pace in the number 9 position, and we definitely need pace at centre back. All across the back 4, to be honest, we need more pace, because I don't think Colin and Pedersen are particularly quick, and they get caught out a lot sort of positionally. I think we need a lot more pace in the side.
And then the other one, again, we've spoke about it on the recording already, but do you think we need a new centre back pairing? Obviously, yes. We've said potentially Ayala and Friend, but obviously, I think that's a simple enough one to answer, isn't it? I think that's nailed on certainty.
I think if we had, and we can both answer this question, Friend and Ayala at the back, or Dean and Roberts, who would you choose?
That's not one that I need to answer. But I think every single Blues fan's in agreement on that one. And that's not to say that Dean and Roberts don't have their perks as well. Obviously Roberts takes a mean long throw that we do nothing with. And Dean, I'll come back to you on what his positives are. I need to do a bit of brainstorming, but no, yeah, Ayala and friend all the way, absolutely. But yeah, that's just about what we've got time for on this episode, anyway. But we're going to be doing another episode next week, obviously, just to review the season. Hopefully, a few more additions through the door by then. A couple more friendlies played as well. Spurs at the weekend. I think we've got Walsall as well, have we, by any chance? Next week?
Yeah.
And then obviously, leading up to the big home clash against Cambridge on Saturday in the Carabao Cup. So, yeah, join us all again next week. Send us your questions on Twitter and on Instagram at Blues Focus Pod. Like I say, it's going to be a weekly episode on Spotify, iTunes and YouTube. Yeah, thanks for joining us.